Sally, welcome.
Joanna, thank you. Lovely to be here.
Really good to see you. So nice to see you, and especially at this time on a what night are we on? I don't even know what
Monday.
night it is. Is it
Only
Monday?
Monday, Joanna. It's only Monday.
That's a really bad sign. Really bad sign. It's going dark, but it is not going dark in the piano world. And you always light up everything around you, Sally. So just want to welcome Sally, Dr. Sally Cathcart. And Sally, we're going to be talking a little bit today, especially about your article that I've been reading recently, and we're going to be delving a little bit into that. But can you just tell us a little bit about you first, Sally, because you have quite a pedigree.
Okay. So yeah, I'm Sally Cathcart, or Sally Chapel, as I was known when I wrote the article, even though I was still married to the same man at the time. But that's another story. And I am director of the Piano Teachers Course UK, which is a fabulous course, which Joanna is joining us as a principal tutor on, and we can maybe chat about that later. I'm also one of the co-founders and director of the Curious Piano Teachers, which started it started 10 years ago now. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary. I love research. I really do enjoy research, and of all sorts and all natures. Before I just went into the world of piano, I have quite a lot of musicianship experience. I was the director of musicianship for the Voices Foundation, which is now overseen by ABRSM, actually. And there we went into schools and we trained up class teachers to help them be able to deliver a fundamental music education based on oral and vocal skills from class teachers who have no musical experience at all. And it was just fabulous and mind-blowing how powerful that was. Before that, I was director of music in a couple of schools, and I've been looking through some of my old stuff and old folders recently, and I found all these wonderful photos and memories of things like in the year 2000, we did a production for the whole of a junior school in Oxford called All Around the World. And every class took part, and it had a band, and we did it over 3 nights. And it was just so much fun and energy that it poured into the school, and was really just a reminder of how powerful the arts are in bringing communities together and giving children purpose and a sense of well-being and confidence, actually, to get up on stage. So is there anything else I need to say? Oh, I know what I could tell you about as well. Yeah, so in 2005, which was 20 years ago, I was awarded what's called a Churchill Fellowship. I was incredibly honoured to be given one of those, and they are awarded every year to about 100 individuals from the UK, with the idea that you go abroad, you talk to other people in your field, and you bring back what you've learnt into the UK. This happened after my research project into the whole brain, and I was absolutely fascinated, and I still am, by the way we teach beginners instruments. And the Churchill Fellowship was looking at the difference that an ear-based approach makes to learning an instrument. And it actually, Joanna, ties in with one of your questions, I think it was yesterday or the day before. What age did you start learning the piano? And I think I put a comment there that when I was in South Africa, it was day 1 of my fellowship. Yeah, so they pay for you, by the way. They pay your flights and things. You have to put a project together, and then you go off. And I went to South Africa, I went to Hungary, and I went to Cuba. And just a fabulous, life-changing experience. It really was. And in South Africa on day 1, I went to the University of Pretoria, and I gave a lecture about the brain and about my research to the students there. And at the end of it, this 18-year-old chap came up, whose name I have got written down somewhere, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. And he said, oh, you might be interested. And this lad had started, he was a second year, and to go to university there, they started at 17. So they had to do their auditions a year before we do over here. And he had started, mind you, to learn the piano age 13. And from between age 13 to 16, he had got to the equivalent of ABRSM grade 8.
Wow.
And it was just mind-blowing. And I thought, well, okay, that's the end of my story, really. I don't need to go any further. I have the proof here. But actually, you realize, having been there for 3 weeks, just at that time, how music is there in everyday culture, everyday life. So we'd be driving in our car to go somewhere in the morning, and you'd see all the women walking along the road from the townships or the squatters' camps, and they'd be walking off to work, and their babies would be in a blanket on the back, crossed over, and they'd all be walking along, singing all the time, moving as they walked. And this was what their babies experienced every single day of their childhood. So once that is in your body, literally, then no wonder that progress can be so very fast, because the music was in their head, it was in their ears, it was in their bodies. It was just amazing, Joanna, really amazing.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, what a glorious way to be. And you mentioned before about the idea of community, and you know, in particular with your education work. And just on the theme of community, you can see we've got quite a few people watching right now. Do put in the comments where you're watching from, and also what is your connection with the piano. Are you a pianist? Are you a parent? Are you a piano teacher? Would be really, really good to know. Shona Cooley says hello, ladies, and she, of course, is a recent graduate of the piano teachers course. So welcome, Shona. Really good to see you there. And yeah, Sally, really fascinating to hear about all your background, and more importantly, to hear your passion for. And I think I'm right in saying, Sally, that in a way we're not piano teachers, are we? We teach people to become musicians. And it just so happens that the piano is kind of the vehicle for that. Would you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. We are musicians first, and we are pianists second. The musicians talk the same language. It doesn't matter what instrument you play, but your musicianship has to be there fundamentally, whether that's in being able to keep a pulse, understanding rhythms, hearing the pitches, etc., etc. Yeah. So you hear that a lot on the PTC.
Absolutely, and you experience that a lot on the PTC, on the Piano Teachers Course UK. You know, that ear-based approach is so important. But I'm really interested. The article in question, and this forms part of the course pre-reading, doesn't it, for piano teachers who are lucky enough to have kind of signed up for this amazing course. And it's your article, the title of which is Developing the Complete Pianist, a study of the importance of a whole brain approach to piano teaching. And I'm really interested, Sally, is what was it that prompted you in the first place to kind of carry out this research? What was this sort of catalyst?
Okay, so before I started my MA, I was teaching. I was head of piano in a secondary school, and I had a lot of students, a lot of girls, it was mostly, who were teenagers, and they were grade 5 to grade 8. And I took them on, you know, from somebody else when I took over the job. And after it was probably a few years, I realized that they had so much tension in their playing all the time. I was having to undo the tension. And I was aware that everything was kind of on the edge of their ability. They were always pushing to be able to read the music and play and read at the same time. And because they couldn't seem to hear the music in their head, they were just trying to almost play from what they saw. So it went straight from the eye to the hand. And that got me really interested in that problem of tension. And I'd always been interested in the Alexander technique, and had quite a few lessons. And there was a most wonderful lady around at the time who taught at the Guildhall. And she was an Alexander teacher, and she was a piano teacher as well. And her name was Nellie Ben-Orr. I don't know whether you ever heard of her, but I have a book. It's not actually, Nellie's written a chapter in this. This is called Tension in the Performance of Music, and it was a symposium. This was edited by Carola Grindia, who's the founder of EPTA. And Nellie wrote a chapter in here and wrote a little book as well, little booklet about it. And she used to run courses at the Guildhall in the summer, at some point, which I went to, and it just blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind, that as soon as what she would do is she would get us all to learn a piece without playing it on the piano first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And memorize a piece. So the first time you played the piece actually was from memory. And this was a piece you'd never played before. And what struck me was, why do we leave it to the top? Why do we leave it until they're grade 8 or beyond? Why do we leave it till they go to music college to get this internalization and therefore this ease of playing? Why do we do that? Mm. And I would say exactly the same today. Why do we just stick the notes in front of them, which causes children to be tense, and therefore they don't make a good sound, and therefore they can't express themselves musically? And really, that's really what sparked this interest of. And I went along to start an MA, and I did 2 years of an MA at Reading, and it was a taught MA in music education. So the first 2 years were all modules, and I was learning how to write and that kind of stuff, because I hadn't really done that very much at all before then. And then the third year was do a dissertation. And I sort of knew what it was I wanted to do. It took me probably the first term to actually come up with the title and be able to put it succinctly together. But it was this idea that the ear has to be at the center of the learning. And once that leads the way, then technique is easier, tension isn't so prevalent, and we're all far closer to the music, really.
I mean, that's such an interesting thought, isn't it? Being far closer to the music. And you make the point in your article that kind of pre-1850, of course, it was sort of the norm to be, in a way, much more creative. It was the norm to improvise, look at Bach and all of these things. And things sort of gradually changed, and we sort of developed this quite traditional, pretty much Victorian outlook in terms of piano pedagogy, I think, especially in this country.
Absolutely. So I can bawl for England on the history of this. I didn't know it so much when I wrote this, because this was pre my PhD, which looked at all that bit. But yes, absolutely. There is a fabulous article by a couple of researchers called Gelrick and Richard Parnkert, that talk about up to 1850, how music masters really would not have music to teach in terms of a piece of sheet music. They would actually teach through improvisation, through imitation, and the odd notation. However, music wasn't published like it is these days. It wasn't till 1850 that change happened, that music was published on an industrial scale. The pianoforte became incredibly popular very, very quickly. And so the call for music teachers, for piano teachers, exploded. And so more and more people who didn't really have the musical skills started to teach the piano, because it was all about self-improvement in the Victorian period. and they turned to the tutor books, which started to be published around there, and that's where the fixed notation comes into play, really.
Which is, of course, it's pretty prevalent still in this. I mean, you make the point in your article that there's this kind of, I suppose, more. We'll get into this, I'm sure, but there's sort of left-right brain aspects to being a musician, and of course, the most important point here is that what we're looking for is that it's a whole brain activity, but there has been this overemphasis, let's say, on left brain activities such as technique, notation, repertoire. And it's interesting because you wrote this article, what, quarter of a century ago? But have we moved on a lot from that point? How far would you say we have moved on?
Well, that's a really interesting question, and it's sort of how long is a piece of string. Certainly in 2010, when I did my PhD, I asked people to respond with which tutor books they used, and I then went and analysed all the tutor books. And you know, if you come on the PTC, you'll hear all about the 5 different sorts of tutor books. But one of them is the middle C approach, and the middle C approach has got lots of problems with it. It works for some, but it has lots of problems. The main one of which is the technical approach, which causes tension right from the very beginning. And also it's a very note-based focused approach, which might be okay if you have a second study, but if you've got a young beginner, you don't want to go in with notation right from the start. Anyhow, 67% of all my respondents were using books that had a middle C approach. So has that changed since then? It might have done a little bit. Because I think there has been a big shift in the last 10 years with the explosion of the internet, social media, Facebook. Things are beginning to shift, I feel, in a way and faster than they have done for a long time. But I think there is still, and I meet evidence of this very, very regularly, that teachers start to teach with the tutor books they were taught themselves, which tend to be the middle C approach in the UK. And it's about having the confidence to look again and take that leap of faith and go, actually, maybe that, and ask the right questions about the tutor book, and why you're using it.
Important, isn't it? Yeah, and having that courage, because of course what we do often is a very solitary profession. And it is perfectly possible to work as a piano teacher and never really encounter any other piano teacher. So we miss out on that sense of community, but we miss out on that all-important professional development, which is so important. And one thing, I mean, I'm yet to start as principal tutor on the piano teachers course, but having visited a couple of times, that energy is apparent. I mean, how people-centered it is also struck me, but that energy is really apparent. That questioning, that sense of everybody learning from each other, and when that energy happens, magic.
It is magic. It really is. And there was a little bit of magic. I went as a tutor along with 3 of my colleagues, Lucinda Mackworth-Young and Jill Morton and Chris Worsley. We went to the Chetham's International Piano Summer School. Deep honour to be asked to this, and we were working with some teachers, but you could see there and the feedback we got from them, and if there any of them listening tonight, hello, thank you, because we all had so much fun, and they were, oh, we didn't know we could do it like this. Yes, you can.
But it's liberating, isn't it? Yes, it is. You're not sitting there going, oh, well, I don't know what to do. Oh, I'll turn the page of the tutor book and see what I'm doing. It's liberating. It's energizing. Yeah. And it's full of exploration and creativity. This is what we're all about. That's the benefit. And all of a sudden, you're dying to get to your teaching studio to try these things out. That's the magic. Just and the point of people listening. Let's just have a look. We've got Yuti from Tokyo. We've got Kat, a primary school teacher who turned piano teacher. She's based in Derbyshire. Steve is one of my students. He's in Brighton. He's also a piano teacher. We've got Rebecca McDougall from Warrington, a piano teacher as well. Tom Mann, primarily in the investment industry, but teaches piano part-time. Neil Piper, hello Neil. Yes, I've taught Neil and Judy's son for some time. So welcome to everybody who's joined us. It's so lovely to have this sense of community here as well. So going back to this notion of listening, I mean, you say in the article that sometimes when the approach is very notation based, when it's very tutor book based, and of course tutor books are important, it's not that we're saying they're not, but one of the problems is that students never learn to listen. How can teachers encourage students to learn to listen?
Okay. I think this does come back to the article, because it talks about the importance of 3 different areas. Improvisation is one, that places listening at its heart, really does. And you can get to improvisation through imitation, but they learn to listen and then they imitate, and then they can start to create their own versions of what you play. They can just mess around a little bit. So that is a really good way of getting them to, encouraging them to use their ears. And also the idea of memorization. And some people say, oh, I don't really memorize. And how can you do memorization with a beginner? Actually, really easily, because once they know a melody, a very simple melody, then you start to talk about the shapes. You get them to identify what's the name of the first note, what's the name of the last note. Can you spot all the patterns, and you highlight all the lovely little patterns, and you can take those patterns out and you can then improvise on those patterns up and down at different points of the piano. So I think
it becomes flexible, doesn't it? And that's that right brain approach again. There's that pattern searching is very right brain.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Rather than talk about right brain and left brain, if I was writing the article again, I'd probably talk about Gestalt and logical skills.
Yeah.
We know these days that left brain is too simplistic.
Yeah.
Because actually skills like reading notation actually the brain uses different parts of it, goes across it, uses different parts for different aspects of it. So it might use a certain part of the brain to actually read the note and translate it into a gesture. But in order to be expressive, then it simultaneously goes somewhere else in another part of the brain. Okay. So it's really important to take that holistic approach in what you're doing, so that you really do engage with that child and try to get the fireworks happening. Literally, we want to make the connections within the brain. I just want to talk about the brain. Can I do that, Joanna, for a moment? We do have a right and left hemisphere. We know that. And the neocortex, which I believe if we unfolded it, because it's that all wrinkly bit, if we unfolded it, it would be about the size of an old broadsheet newspaper. Yeah, it would be that big. But obviously, walking around with your head in that shape is not going to be a good look. So instead, it's all crinkly, and it fits into this skull here. And it's made up out of white matter. And when you look at brains, you often see they're quite grey. And that's a process of myelination that causes all that greyness. Now, when babies are born, they can't do very much, can they? There are certain basic functions that they do, and they are born with millions of neurons, but these neurons are generally unconnected. And what a neuron does is when we carry out an action, that neuron gets all excited and it generates an electrical signal and a chemical response, which goes from one neuron, woo, it connects over to the next neuron. And the more times you repeat that same action, the stronger that connection will get. So eventually it will just be whoosh, whoosh. It's like going from a tiny little path to a superhighway. I tell the story, and I think I got this from Tony Buzan in his mind map book. It's like going through a forest. Pretend you live on one side of the forest and your best friend lives on the other side. And you've got a birthday present and you want to take it to them. And so you've never done this before. So you take your axe, you put your birthday present on the back. Actually, no, you forget the birthday present, forget the birthday present. You're so busy getting your axe, you forget to pick up the birthday present. But you go through the forest and it's a deep, dense, dark forest. And it takes you hours and hours and hours to cut your way through this forest. And, you know, you get all tangly and you get hot and bothered. And eventually you reach your friend on the other side. And then you go, oh, I've forgotten your present. Silly me. And so you go back. You have to go back. And of course, this time it's just a little bit easier, but still quite hard. You're making a bigger path still. Yeah. You pick up the present and you head back again, and you're making the path bigger all the time. And this is how your brain is working, believe it or not, is that every time you travel down that same path, it becomes wider and faster because you're setting down this kind of myelin sheath, like a plastic. And eventually that pathway turns into a B road, and eventually that B road becomes a major A road. And then eventually it becomes a superhighway, a motorway. And that's how things become automated. That's how things become automated. And that's really important for us to understand as teachers, because that's the process of learning a new skill that we have to help our young students to do. They have to repeat things many, many times. And we do as adults as well. When we learn something, we have to repeat it many, many times in exactly the same way. Okay. Going back to my two hemispheres though here. So sorry, I don't know whether it's how this will come out, but this is my right hemisphere. And that controls all the movements down my left side. And my left hemisphere here controls all the movements down my right side. So it's my left hemisphere that controls my melody playing and all that sort of stuff, yeah, over here. And it's the right side that controls all my left hand. Now, we know that a lot of the spatial awareness comes from your emotional brain, which is kind of in the middle of all that. So we've got three parts to the brain, and I'm talking about the neocortex. But within that, we have kind of all the limbic system and underneath that second part. And we know that the right-hand part of the brain connects really deeply to the emotional brain in that limbic system. Spatial awareness. You think about that left hand of yours, how much spatial awareness it needs to have. Give that to your right hand and it's hopeless, isn't it?
That's very true.
Yeah. And so it's that mixture of the two sides of the brain, the neocortices working together, that give us the ability to play music and to play the piano in particular. That was kind of a very potted, rushed history or overview. And I am not a scientist, but hopefully that makes it a little clearer what's going on there.
Good to fool me. I've just highlighted here, now I've figured out how to do it. Trish Cummings is here, and of course Trish is a huge fan, proponent of music learning theory, which is of course Edwin Gordon's approach, which is pretty marvelous really, but very much I suppose the gist of it is this sense of, just as we have a sort of a language acquisition process in language, that there's a similar process in music, and he too argues that we tend to come in at the reading stage and we miss out on all those listening and the audiation and, you know, all that sort of internalization. And Trish is a real proponent of that. So good to see you here, Trish, as well.
Yeah.
I remember you saying, Sally, that if you had your time again, you would love to spend a little bit more time delving into Gordon's music theory.
Yeah. I mean, it's very closely related to Kodai
Yes.
and the whole methodology and the pulsar,
very much your
but
background.
it goes into so much more depth about it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, the internalization is something that's really, really important. I think, you know, this sense of having that ability to hear music in the head, and that fascinates me. That idea that having that mental picture of the music, in a way, frees us up from those muscular tensions and problems. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about your thoughts on internalization and audiation?
Yeah. So internalization to me is more than just being able to hear the music in your head. Audiation is I'm not an expert in audiation. It's an American term more than anything, and it's one that Gordon coined. So I'm just going to talk about internalization predominantly. And internalization to me is the ear and the movement that you want to make. So let's do a bit. The easiest way to do it is to do some. So I'd like you all just to imagine in your mind's eye and your mind's ear, sitting at your piano, walking in from another room, and get your piano stool ready and just sit down on it. Okay. So in your mind's eye and mind's ear, if you've got a piece from memory that you know, then just imagine for a moment taking your hands to the keyboard and placing your hands on the first notes and playing them, maybe just one note. And you should be able to feel it within you. You should be able to feel that in your fingers. You know, what finger were you using? I was using finger 3 in my right hand, and I was using finger 5 in my left hand. And I went for something very simple because I was talking at the same time. I just went for bass C in the left hand and treble E in the right hand, not middle E, but the next one, treble E. And I really sank into those notes, and they made that gorgeous major third sound. Let's try it again, whatever you did. Take your hands off, put it in your laps. I'm saying take your hands off. Your hands do not move. Yeah, your hands, these hands are still here. In your mind's eye, you do that. And in your mind's ear, you hear something. Have a go. Do you know, it's really powerful, really powerful. And I do that and I think, oh, yeah, it is really powerful, this, because you can feel something different. Joanna, how was it for you?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it was funny because, yeah, I was playing some Ravel in my head. But you can feel it, you can hear it, absolutely you can. And I find myself pondering about it because I was thinking, oh, I've been playing this chord for a while. Oh, what's the next one? And I don't know, I just experienced it really differently. And then I was thinking, and isn't it fascinating with the research that shows, with, you know, with improvements in neurological research, that even in the act of thinking about it, even without the physical act of playing, the same parts of the brain fire up. I mean, how powerful is that? I mean, it was you, wasn't it, that brought this book to my attention, which is a wonderful book. And if you haven't got this book, you should really consider, because it's got so much in terms of neuroscience and playing.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a fabulous book. The book that inspired me, that helped to inspire me, and I keep talking about mind's eye and things, is when I was doing my MA. It's called The Mind's Eye by Ian Robertson, who's a cognitive scientist, I believe. And he tells a story in here, because doing this activates the same neural pathways. Imagining it activates those same neural pathways as actually physically doing it. Okay. And he tells the story in here of an athlete, because a lot of the research has been done into sports and athletes and things. Tells the story of a runner, and I think they were doing something like one of the very long races, the 8,000 meters or whatever. And this chap was sitting at home and ran this race in his head, in his mind's eye. And probably wasn't the 8,000 meters, but it was very long. And he wasn't happy with the way he did it. So he immediately ran it again. He immediately ran the same race again in his mind's eye, which physically you can't do. Physically, you could not do that. And mentally, he couldn't do it either, because he had to go and be sick. He was physically sick from trying to do it. And that story is told in there, and all based on research and things. So it is a fascinating thing, because I think when you are internalizing, it really makes you focus. There is no room for that additional little chatter that goes, what are you going to have for supper tonight, Sally?
Yeah. I mean, the implication is actually, especially in terms of performance anxiety, that getting that whole picture, being able to almost practice it. I mean, I think there's another story in the book of somebody wanting to prepare a viola concerto, I think it was, for an audition. And having a physical injury that meant it was impossible for her to do that, but she was determined to do it, and could only play the viola for a week or two before the audition at music college, and won it, and got exactly what she needed, doing everything in mental preparation. I mean, the idea is crazy, but I think the sense of liberation that it brings, that idea that you're no longer just in the process of decoding some dots and turning them into physical movements. You're actually getting this whole picture of how you want the music to sound. We are free. We can play anything. Just imagine. We're free to play anything. And it becomes so much easier for, in a way, the physical to catch up with that. Such a powerful thought.
Absolutely, because it allows the physicality to come through, actually, and it doesn't interrupt with the muscle movement that you've already, you've already programmed in the muscle movement that you need to play a piece.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we're performing, sometimes when we're performing, the muscles know what to do, but up here is busy interfering with that and saying, oh, you don't want to do it this way. And then the brain's getting these mixed messages. And that's why it bumps you off.
Yeah,
that's why it bumps you off.
Yeah, that internal dialogue. And you've mentioned that, I know, especially again in the article with regard to memorization as well, that we tend to rely on this kind of automated sense of, well, I suppose, kinesthetic physical memory. And then as soon as we get in that situation of slight fear, then the internal dialogue kicks in and everything kind of gets into a kind of battle. And that's why we feel the way we do. Janine Hanfus from New York City. This is so interesting. Lots of different comments that we're getting. I know this gentleman, a certain Roberto García Lopez. I've heard of this guy before. He says he uses this for singing as well, thinking of the larynx position. It's very interesting, living with a singer as I do. Often when he's listening to somebody singing, I will see him literally kind of, and he's getting the whole mechanism there. But I don't know, he's kind of in sync with what's going on. It's fascinating.
Can I just mention this book, because this was
Yeah.
one of another book that absolutely just burnt me up when I found it, and I heard about it, and I spent about 3 years looking for it in bookshops, and eventually found it at the Royal Festival Hall bookshop. And it's called A Soprano on Her Head, by a wonderful writer called Eloise Reichstadt. And it is about performance anxiety. But just seeing Roberta's little comment there. So what she does, what she starts with here, is how she helped a soprano to free up. Because whenever she went to sing the soprano, everything would go, and it would all get stuck. So having tried everything, she got the soprano to stand on her head and sing upside down. And it worked a treat.
I think various opera directors do that, to be quite honest.
So it is a wonderful little book, this. And any of you that know the wonderful writer William Weston, pianist, you'll know that he was actually inspired by this book when he came to write The Perfect Wrong Note, because it's all
Wonderful
wrapping
book.
up in the same thing. It's all looking at the same thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that's really interesting. Neil Piper makes the point. The parallels with Aaron Jones's ideas on language learning are striking, and Neil is a real linguist. So yeah, very, very interesting parallels there.
Indeed.
It's absolutely fascinating. That the whole thing is absolutely fascinating, and also that, and I know, again, in your article you mentioned about that oral picture and how it actually, using that. Even my dog is impressed.
She just wants to walk.
Absolutely, yeah. Bringing together all of these things, the sense of breaking things down into patterns, the sense of that whole picture, that internalization, it all helps with our anxiety and the way that we approach a piece. I mean, just thoroughly fascinating, the whole thing. And of course, these are all things. I mean, we begin the piano teacher's course by delving into all of this, which I don't know about you, but if you're a teacher, surely you've got to find this fascinating.
Yeah, you have. Absolutely. I think the other thing that it does is it helps to free us up. And you mentioned that word already, freeing up. But it helps us freeing up from there being a single way of playing something. So there isn't a right version. There isn't a perfect version. There is this version in this moment. There is no other time except now.
Yeah.
The way you played it yesterday, well, you felt very different yesterday. Probably the weather was different. It might have been a root or a branch day, for those of you that know about that kind of thing. It's different. You've eaten something different. You can't play it the same again. So if in your practice you are playing around with that idea of improvising around a little idea, or improvising a new practice way of a way of practicing it. If you sit back when you're playing and just internalize something a little bit, why not walk away from the piano and say, "Oh, can I hear that? Can I feel it? Can I play it in my head?"
And that's when it's liberating, isn't it? That sense of play, that sense of openness and creativity. I guess, again, it is the same if you're learning a language. What you're going to do, learn a set of phrases, of set phrases. You're never going to be free to do that. What you want to be able to do is take little things and put them together and construct things yourself. And that's where language is born, and that's where communication is born. And I would say it's exactly the same thing, that this very traditional Victorian notation-based, reading-based way of working essentially stifles us and creates musicians that are perhaps devoid of expression and not free to develop that sense of expression.
Yeah, absolutely. And this adopting this kind of approach really is so essential for instrumental teachers, piano teachers we're talking to here, because we know that quite often in piano lessons, and we're all guilty of this, we tend to talk a lot and we tend to explain things a lot, and we tend to have the music there. Yeah, well, we all do it. It's what comes naturally to us in a way, because that's the way we were taught, and so we start in that way, and it's hard to then break out of it.
Yeah.
But it is so essential with younger children primary age children, that actually we don't just use the tutor book, that we use that maybe as a starting point, but we do include improvisation, because, okay, here's quite a scary thing. Children's brain, I've talked about the neurons, and those develop to, you know, when they get to 3 or 4, their brain, their neurons, the pathways are linking up at a most incredible rate. You know, they talk about the terrible twos. I have a theory, which I need to go over and research a bit, that it's terrible twos because they can't control what's happening in their brain, and their brain is just exploding, and they have too much electrical energy in there. We know that at the age of, you know, up to the age of 6 or 7, that is the peak time for brain development in terms of neuron connection. And we also know that at the age of about 7, and those of you that know, have worked in schools, will know that in year 3, as it is in UK education, that's 7 going on 8, there is a change in the child. They suddenly,
isn't it?
yeah, they're suddenly able to have more rational thoughts, and they're not quite so self-centered. And that's because the brain starts to connect up in a different kind of way. Yeah. Now, what was striking to me and really horrifying was that probably the brain stops connecting up quite so fiercely once they get beyond that age of 7. And if we haven't exposed them to the full range of holistic music making skills, then there is an increasing chance that actually some neurons are just going to wither away. They'll get pruned. They die off. Yeah.
Use or lose it.
Use it or lose it. Thank you for reminding us of that little phrase, Joanna. Yeah, you use it or you lose it. So that made me go as a teacher, so I have to do this. It isn't an option. I have a moral duty to teach in this way.
Yeah. And you can understand that people might feel a little bit overwhelmed with that notion of this sense of, wow, there's this whole universe of an exciting way to teach. I wasn't taught that way. And I guess that is where your professional development comes in. And you think about it, in a school, every school teacher, it's kind of your duty, that there is every expectation that you're going to engage in professional development, and that's going to better your practice, and you're doing it always for the sake of the students, always for the sake of the students. And I guess it's the same thing. We're all learning all the time. So this is where opportunities for professional development, like the piano teacher's course, come in.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think we have a duty to ourselves, don't we, and to each other and to the children that we teach, to actually do the best we can. Yeah. And we're not alone. We might be, you know, you're in your studio there and I'm here, and there's other people watching in their studios, but actually look at us. Yeah. We're all connected. We don't have to be alone any longer. I think we just have to connect together and share best practice and good ideas. Yeah.
And the energy, and then yes, the sum of everything becomes greater then. Steve Hort has just mentioned, when kids learn language, they start with imitating the sound, then learning to speak, learning to read comes somewhat later. Surely the same should be with music. Absolutely. And in a way, Steve, you've just summarized Dr. Edwin Gordon's theory beautifully. In doing that. Yes, this is absolutely right. And the traditional view in especially the UK is we start with reading, but we're missing out so much valuable musicianship, valuable education. And if only we can help people to see that this is where a lot of the glory of piano teaching comes from. And I will get this passionate about it.
No, I think we have to.
We have to.
Yeah, it is what we have to do. And you're right. You know, Steve has summed up Edwin Gordon's, and the fact that he points out that most piano teachers go in at number 4, which is the reading, and they miss out the first ones, which is the imitation, the chanting and the audiating, and the singing and the copying and stuff like that, and they go straight in there. So it comes back to this musicianship training, And again, you know, modern life has changed slightly. So when I was a child, I did listen. My mum did sing nursery rhymes to me, and there was a sense of music around, and you do listen with mother and stuff like that. And actually, that's not happening in the same way. And which is why, to be honest, you know, I've written some musicianship at the piano books called Ready to Play, and it's for that. It's for the musician, the young pianist who has to learn the musicianship, and it's such fun. You know, you do end up doing jelly on a plate and being a wibble wobble, jelly on a plate. There's the pulse, yeah, and then they learn about rhythm, and then they learn about pitch. And you know, pitch is not something we are born with. We have to learn about pitch. We learn to inflect our voices. So I meet so many people, Joanna. I'm sure you have as well. Teachers, and by that I don't mean piano teachers, I mean classroom music teachers, who tell me, "Oh, Alan, I'm not musical. I could never learn to read the notation in my piano lessons." And I go, no, that's not what being musical is about. You know? And then you teach them a systematic approach to hear the difference between a high and lower pitch like that. And suddenly they go, oh, I get it. And then they start to read graphic notation and they go, oh, yes. And then you move them onto the stave and they went, this is like a light bulb. I never thought I'd be able to do this. But everybody can do it if it's approached in a systematic way. Take away the guesswork. You don't have to guess. It's all there. It's all there.
Absolutely. And Trish is agreeing with what Steve was saying before. Trish, having freshly back from her trip to the US, where she's been, I think it was a music learning theory conference. Trish, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and she's just full of joy. And isn't it wonderful? And I rather feel, Sally, that, you know, just what you've summed up there is kind of where we should start to draw things to a close, because it is joyful when we see how things have changed. And there's no need to be afraid of all this excitement and creativity and buzz and creating musicians. These are the musicians of the future, and goodness knows the world needs music right now more than it ever did.
Yeah, absolutely. The music, the world definitely does need music, and it needs the piano. The piano is such a special instrument. And I remember hearing when I was at the Chetham's Piano Summer School, somebody from Iran talking about Iranian piano music and how they'd taken the piano and actually changed the tuning on some of it and made it sound like more of their traditional instrument. So cultures all around the world have taken the piano and have somehow absorbed it into their own culture, because it has a very special voice, I think, in itself. But we do need music, and we need children who are passionate about music, and we need to teach in a way that is really going to harness that love and that passion. Because sadly, unless we start to teach in a more holistic and multi-sensory way, I think children of today are going to stop having piano lessons, and they're going to find, actually, I can learn from the internet. We know they can't if it's a holistic approach, but we have to offer so much more these days, because we want to give them that love for music and send them off into the future with a sense of being themselves, really stronger sense.
You're so right. And that love and passion for music and for teaching, well, really, you exude these, don't you? And that is why you really are a figurehead of not just the UK, but piano pedagogy and musicianship internationally, I would say. And I'm very fortunate that you've come to join me this evening. Always a pleasure to chat to you, Sally. And I will just say, I cannot wait to come and work with you at the Piano Teachers Course UK. If anybody has any questions about this, because this is just the starting point, believe me, this is just the starting point. It's an absolute treasure trove. And, you know, it's probably the biggest gift that you could give to yourself as a teacher, to allow yourself this opportunity to develop and to be with other like minds. Pretty special.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking me, Joanna, to come and chat with you. And yeah, just to say again, you know, the piano teachers course is truly transformational. And you mentioned Shona. I don't know whether she's still around, but she has just completed the course, and you know, it really does change the way you teach and help you to feel confident in your approach to teaching, and know that actually this is the way that teaching is these days. Yeah, it really is. So
Yeah.
thank you again, Joanna. And
thank you. And Trish's beautiful words. She's just said you are both a joy and a gift to us all. I think we're just all just a joy in the entire community. I would say. But thank you so much, Trish. And your energy is just incredible. Thank you, Sally, so much. As predicted, it has gone dark, but what a way to spend an hour. What a way to spend.
We didn't run out of things to say either, did we, Joanna?
Oh, no, we never do.
We didn't really think there was a chance of that, to be honest.
No, it's never happened yet, and I suspect it never will.
No, I agree.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody for joining us. Do share this. You know, we want to get the word out to everybody who's engaged in the piano world and instrumental teaching in any ways, really. So do share. Yeah. Thank you again, Sally, and I hope everybody has a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.